All right. Here I know. Whoa, na 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 na. Oh, na 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 na. IT Season 3.
Good evening and welcome back to another edition of the myt-sports podcast. I'm your host, the one and only Talent Omar Taylor. It is another good day in the neighborhood. We have a nice, lovely day. We're sitting just around 82 degrees, about 40% chance of rain sitting here in South Florida. We got a lot of stuff to talk to you about today. We're going to get into the long ball. We're going to talk about your fantasies. We're going to get into some big pimping. And of course, we're going to talk some football. But before we go any further, I need to pay my condolences and my respects to the passing of my grandfather, Gladstone Kermit Edie. He passed on September 17th at approximately 14:30 on Sunday. He died at 91 years old. So basically, he lived from December 25th, 1926, September 17, 2017. I'm going to take my moment of silence now. Rest in peace, Grandpa. So with that said, I don't want to draw you guys too far off top. But yeah, that's what I've been dealing through this week. So if anybody's wondering what's been going on with T and how come I've been a little sporadic. I don't know, I haven't been able to get back to everybody like I needed to, but that is so far the case. But you know what I say, regardless of the time, regardless of the weather, and I guess in this case, regardless of the situation, it's always a good time to talk some sports. Back at it like a sports fanatic. Woo! You know what? Let's get right into it. Let's get right into football. So, there's no reason to go anywhere else. A lot of stuff happened. Everybody's excited. This is week 2. So let's get into football. And let's talk about how Jay-Z turned down the NFL to perform at the Super Bowl. Yes, folks. Jay-Z completely told us, the NFL, that basically they can shove it because, he's making that silent protest. That what is the reason why Kaepernick should be in the league. So to the NFL, you so far, before anybody takes the field or reveal any of these records, you get the first L of the evening. Now, before we get into, that's about the football we're going to get into. Some major things have happened, like in Major League Baseball right now. They broke the record last night for the most home runs ever in a Major League Baseball season at 5,694 home runs total in the season. They broke that. And this was broken by none other than Kansas City's own, and Kansas City Royals, that is, Alex Gordon, who, ironically, that was only his 8th home run of the year. And while we're talking about baseball, right, I'm not going to stay too long here, but while we are talking about baseball, is it just me, but every time I look up this kid named Jackie Bradley Jr. is robbing someone at the wall. I mean, literally, like, I think they said like it's only like his third one this season, but I feel like every time I look up, I'm seeing a Jackie Bradley Jr. highlight. Now, I may be wrong. Maybe it's not always at the wall he's robbing people. Maybe he's just robbing people, period. But I swear to you, every time I look up, for some odd reason, I see Jackie Bradley Jr. Now, it's finally that time. What time? It's that time of the day where we finally get a chance to break down week 2 of the NFL. And if you listen to the mighty picks, right? The mighty football picks, then you had a really good week. I don't know if you won your fantasy football pool. Not your fantasy football pool. Let me rephrase that. I don't know if you won your football pool. Check it out. I'm gonna make a segment for this one. I'm gonna make a segment for that one. But if you played your pool, then you only got 3 losses. And we're gonna get through these teams. Houston played the Thursday night game, take on Cincinnati. And I played just game a little bit. Like, Watson started out actually alright. Like, believe it or not, like, he had 2 early drops, and they were catchable balls. So these are 2 balls that should have went for deep yardage. Were right in the receiver's hands, and the receivers just couldn't haul that in. But Watson himself found a way to keep his team in the game and to keep that ball always moving and always keeping it positive. Pac-Man Jones decided that he was going to eat early in that game. And he came home with a pick 6. Oh, I'm sorry, not a pick 6, but a 28-yard return. Not too long after that, we had a Cincinnati touchdown by their speedster Ross. I'm sorry, we had a Cincinnati turnover by their speedster Ross, who fumbles the ball directly to Javanian Clowney. Javanian Clowney runs with that ball like a madman holding it in one hand. He gained some good yardage, and the game kind of sputtered for a while after that. That's why I said this is only even going to break down like this. I know this hurts. And we're going to get to the injury report eventually sometime in this show. And also, let's let you know, guys, I know I mentioned earlier, but for more information about where the viewing and where the funeral is going to be, you can stay tuned right here, and I'll get some more information out over the next week, between now and next Wednesday. Or you can call me directly on the line. You know what my phone number is, people. So, back to the speedster, back to this fumble, back to this game, back to this spurt, this game that kind of hit quicksand. As Houston won this game 13-9, that's why I said this game quickly hit some quicksand. What ended up being the key to victory, or the game-winning play, was literally on the quarterback, and not with his arm, but with his legs, as he broke for just about a 40-yard touchdown. Broke over to the right-hand side, ducked between a couple of defenders, made somebody miss, slipped another 2, and bam, end zone. And that one touchdown was a determining factor into Houston's 13-9 victory over Cincinnati, that is now taking their second loss, and they're not looking too hot so far to start off this season. Cincinnati has a hard game coming up this week, and we're going to see if they can get back on the winning side, but Cincinnati could start out 0-3. And when you talk about, did they make the playoffs last year? So if they did, when we talk about teams that can make the playoffs, and one of the teams that made the playoffs last year and is not going to make the playoffs this year, Cincinnati's looking like the first team out. Next up, we had Minnesota versus Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh did what Pittsburgh does. They got the ball to their top playmakers. We saw Le'Veon Bell disappoint a couple of you guys again, but we saw their wide receiver, that bad dude that he is, come through again and again and again and again and again and again. Antonio Brown's a bad dude. Is a bad boy. He definitely gets his. But what we saw was maybe Minnesota's defense isn't as good as we thought it was. Even though Minnesota has had 2 very hard matchups in the very first 2 games of the season. Remember, their defense was being praised last week when they won. Now it doesn't look like it was so shabby when they went up against what I consider a much more elite defense now than what was New Orleans. So they got scorched by New Orleans, and then they get scorched by Pittsburgh. But they're able to beat New Orleans and not able to beat Pittsburgh. And now they lose Sam Bradford. So for you people that are wondering about injury report, if you had Sam Bradford for some reason, he's a guy that you're going to want to have to stay away from. Baltimore beat Cleveland 24-, and these are all games I've had right so far. I don't take my first loss until we get to Florida. Actually, majority of my losses was picking against or with 4 Florida teams. 2 out of 3, 66%. So we had Cleveland versus Baltimore, and Baltimore showed us a couple of things. Baltimore showed us that, you know what, their running game may be for real, but also Baltimore, once again, as I mentioned last week, they reminded us of what their defense can do. But it was also up against Cleveland, and Cleveland isn't anything to sneeze at in the basketball world. When it comes to baseball and basketball, yeah. But in football, Cleveland's reputation is that of 26 quarterbacks in a decade? Something of that nature? Whew. We have Arizona who beat Indy. Who barely beat Indy. And the surprise in that game is that Arizona barely beat Indy. Indianapolis is a team that's supposed to be struggling on defense. Indianapolis is a team that basically has no quarterback to get to his weapons. Indianapolis that also has no running game. Indianapolis that has no offensive line. And yet Arizona struggled. We're going to keep an eye on Arizona this next week. Because Arizona struggling against Indiana is no bueno. So maybe it has something to do with them traveling. We gon' see.
We gon' see.
Kansas City versus Philly. Kansas City beat Philly 27-20. As Kansas City continued to scheme up plays, and this is what Andy Dalton is going to do. And Philadelphia didn't look bad. Carson Wentz didn't look bad. It's just that Kansas City is coached that well, and for some odd reason, for a team that has now beat Philly and New England, still isn't considered. Where are they now? The number 1 team in the power rankings? We'll have to see. So the first loss I took was picking Jacksonville over Tennessee. And oddly, and I don't know if oddly is really the word, but ironically, Jacksonville's run game still did what their run game does, right? Like, we had Leonard Fournette still produce and still get a touchdown. We had Jacksonville's defense still put up some kind of resistance. Tennessee and what Marcus Mariota is doing just happens to look like a more sustainable offense. And they were able to still win in Jacksonville. And I say still win because I still feel like Jacksonville is that team that they're going to have a couple of roller coaster games. But if you ask me if they're going to be on the plus side of 500, I pick the plus side, which means I believe they're going to win 9 to 10 games this season. So they're going to have a few hiccups like this, and hopefully they learn as they go into this new regime of Tom Coughlin. Because we're seeing what's happening in Jacksonville versus what's happening in New York, in Giants land. Carolina beats Buffalo in an ugly game 3-9 with Cam Newton still doesn't look like himself. And for some reason, Buffalo didn't look like it themselves. I mean, we're talking about LaShawn McCoy. We're talking about their tight end Clay. I am not sure what happened there, but I don't like it. But it helps me as a Jet fan. Because like I said, there's hope. I still believe that the Jets are going to beat Buffalo and Miami this year each. We're not having only one victory this year. You can forget about that. The Jets are going to suck because, you know,
They are who we thought they were. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass. But
Jets are who we thought they were. We ain't nobody crowning their Jets. But Jets are going to have a couple of victories. We're coming up on a break right now. When we come back to the Mighty Sports Podcast, We're going to finish up with our week 2 recap of the NFL. We're going to get into our week 3 predictions. And, ladies, you know what's coming at the end. You know what's coming at the end. Something just for you. That and more on the Mighty Sports Podcast.
Let me put you on a game. Being taken advantage of isn't a game and it needs to stop. Aren't you tired of being ripped off by those other guys? Then head to Multiverse Video Games and get the value you deserve on your games and gaming products. The games cost money, and you shouldn't feel like you're just giving them away. So why continuously buy a membership for prices and deals that you should be getting anyway? Multiverse Games not only has fair pricing and great trading deals, Multiverse has a wide variety of games, not just all your popular next-gen titles, but also all your favorite old-school titles and systems, starting as early as Atari and Nintendo to as current as PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And yes, that does include PlayStations, GameCubes, and Xboxes in between. Even family-owned and operated for over 10 years, just off the intersection of 183rd and 7th Avenue in the Nurses Registry Plaza. That's conveniently located at 830 Northwest 183rd Street, Miami Gardens, Florida 33169. Believe it or not, just 5 minutes from Sun Life Stadium, $7.90 the ticket, and oh no, let's not forget Tootsie's Adult Entertainment Center. Multiverse Games, where you save more so you can play more.
And we are back to the myt-sports podcast. And if you are listening, I want to thank you once again for listening. You are listening right here on mytradio.net or other platforms that I have provided for you. But let's really hope that you went directly to the source and you listening to mytradio.net. Or you can listen to myt-sports.net. But either way, I thank you guys for listening. So as we continue, we have up New England versus New Orleans. And if you remember, initially, I was going to pick New Orleans because I figured eventually Drew Brees is going to win at home. They're going to go at the Dome. They're going to have to show out. But I told you, you know what? That pick initially was really just talking from a place that was my hatred for the New England Patriots. So ultimately, I ended up changing my pick, and I went with New England. And you know what? I picked right. New England ended up dominating the New Orleans Saints 36-20. As New Orleans Saints once again have shown that their defense is horrendous ever since they won the Super. And I don't get this, right? Whenever these teams that have great quarterbacks, right, they put together a really good defense around that quarterback, and they get a couple of offensive weapons, but they put a team around them. And what ends up happening is that you ever realize how quickly they get rid of the defense? And they keep trying to build offensive weapons, as it was the offensive weapons that kept on getting the ball back. They did it to Peyton Manning. They did it to Drew Brees. They did it to Tom Brady to an extent, a couple of times. Who else did they do it to? They slowly have tried to do it to, but no. I'm not going to go that far. They did it to Eli Manning. I don't get it. When Drew Brees won that Super Bowl, they did it to Aaron Rodgers. When Drew Brees won that Super Bowl, it was more about that defense than it was that offense. When Aaron Rodgers won that Super Bowl, it was about that defense, not that offense. When Eli Manning won that Super Bowl, it was about that defense, not that offense. I don't get this. I don't understand this part where they where they reset these teams and they try to make it more offensive minded and completely ignore the defensive side of the ball. But this is what we've had going on in New Orleans for a couple of years now. And while Drew Brees in his greatness gets to put up 5,000 plus yards every single season, he needs to put up 5,000 plus yards every single season just for his team to have a mediocre record. So they lost to New England. And just about as bad as Tampa Bay or Chicago lost to Tampa Bay, 7-29. As everything that we hoped Tampa Bay would be, they showed that game. Jameis Winston came out with his gunslinger mentality. He got the ball to Evans. He got the ball to the tight end. He got the ball to the running back. He didn't get the ball to Deshaun Jackson as much, but he definitely got the ball to Evans. Didn't really take advantage of O.J. Howard too much. O.J. Howard is still being integrated, but enough. enough. That you're like, hey, OJ. Still, nigga. So Tampa Bay was so dominant in this game that, if I'm not mistaken, they took out their starters, if not by the third quarter, definitely in the fourth quarter. Because I stopped earning fantasy points. And oh man, could I have used just 5, 6 more points? One more touchdown. Famous Jameis. You're becoming a pain in my anus. First you don't show up week 1, then in week 2 you take some time off? Like, what do you need time off if you just had a whole week off? You had the first week off and you still took off time in that game. I don't get it. And this is where I took my second loss, with this Miami and Chargers game. And it wasn't even so much that the Miami Dolphins was so impressive that I was like, okay, this is a justifiable loss here. It's just that the Chargers did what the Chargers do, and they didn't finish the game. And on a last-minute drive, on a 2-minute drill situation, the LA Chargers, I keep going to call them Clippers, the LA Chargers managed to allow the Dolphins to eke in a score as they lost 19-17. Or I should say the Dolphins won 19-17. But like I said, that's a game really more that, to me, the Chargers lost more than I believe the Dolphins won. Listen, if Phillip Rivers is gonna keep on of this talk of Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger and Eli Manning, he can't have these games. And I'm getting to the point where I'm about to see a ring on it. Like, I'm kind of like Beyonce. I'm going to see a ring on that. Next up, New York Jets versus the Oakland Raiders. Oakland Raiders beat the New York Jets 20-45, which was not, to believe it or not, the worst victory of the evening. Actually, yes, it wasn't. That was Pittsburgh versus Minnesota. Thank you very much. Who lost by 27 points. The Jets only lost by 25. Seattle had a hard time beating San Francisco at home in Seattle, 12-9, but they did pick up the victory. And you know what? More than anything else, what Seattle's supposed to do is that they're supposed to win. Whether it looks 12-9 or it looks 29-7, the fact that Seattle won is the overline head here, right? That's the story here. Like, that's the headline. Because when you're a good team, even when you struggle, you should still beat the bad teams. Because bad teams know how to lose and good teams know how to win at end of games. So Seattle should have ended the game, should have found a way to pick up that victory. Now, based off what I just said, maybe Miami's a better team than what I thought they are. Maybe the Chargers are a worse team than that we thought that they have been because of their glory days of Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Antonio Gates in his prime. But remember, even then, when they had all of those boys, we always thought they were underachieving. Didn't they have a better team now? Or are we just still, or is Phillip Rivers still getting benefit of the doubt because of how good he looked during those teams, and his name now kind of means something because now he's kind of tied to the same Travis Roethlisberger and Eli Manning, and he was one of the top 3 quarterbacks amongst them, but so far he has been the least successful. Phillip Rivers is starting to disappoint me. The LA Rams lost to the Washington Redskins as Kirk Cousins found a way to pull out a victory in a shootout of 27-20. Let's leave it at that. And the LA Rams did what the LA Rams do. They found a way to lose. Let's put that there. Now, surprisingly, was when Denver beat Dallas. Especially when the major reason why they lost is because their money man, Des Bryant, the guy that says he's going to show everybody he's a top 3 receiver and probably wants to get paid like that, probably wants the Benjamins like that, didn't show up and hasn't showed up for 2 straight weeks. Unable to get separation from the corners, unable to blow past a safety. What's his name? Talib? I keep on calling Talib Khalib, but I know that's not his name. Talib. Talib basically dared him to try to get past him. He shut him down. And remember, Talib is no spring chicken. We're talking about a guy now that is in the age of what Darrell Revis or Woodson was at some point. Like he's now considered a veteran corner. Super veteran corner. And he's still shutting guys down like Des Bryant, who was supposed to be these studs, supposedly getting mad that he was ranked at the number 9 or number 10 wide receiver. And now we're looking at it, we're like, it's kind of fitting. But yet you wanted to get paid. Not quite yet. But I'm pretty sure you let that out there because you want to get paid. So Dallas starts out 0-2. As Denver's defense shows that, hey, you guys forget that we just recently won a Super Bowl? With Peyton Manning that had a fading arm, but still a sharp mind. Interesting game here. And maybe we had a bunch of games jotted down as the multi-best games of the week, right? Minnesota-Pittsburgh. Surprisingly, Pittsburgh destroyed Minnesota, right? We had Kansas City-Philly, and Kansas City-Philly was a one-touchdown game. Jacksonville, Tennessee happened to be a block. But we wanted to see what these two young studs can do. Denver, Dallas was another one that we wanted to see because we wanted to see if that offense had come back. And we not only did we see Des Bryant not play well, we also see Ezekiel Elliott not give effort. Full effort. But this is only his second game back. But he did play in the preseason, didn't he? So second game back for what? See how the excuses all of a sudden, right? He's only the second week. Don't make excuses for that man. Atlanta versus Green Bay was the final game for the multiverse game of the week. And they kind of disappointed, right? But 34-23, Atlanta over Green Bay. And kind of for the reason that we picked Atlanta is for the same exact reasons why they won. Green Bay's defense is suspect. I'm not saying that Atlanta's defense is phenomenal, but Green Bay's defense is definitely suspect. And you're going up against an offensive juggernaut in Atlanta, in their home turf, in the dome. And we all know about people that get dome. They love dome, and they don't like to lose when it comes to dome. Atlanta is on their path, definitely to another playoff appearance. But they're doing so far the right things early on to make another Super Bowl appearance. And I can't say the same thing about the New York Giants. The Giants lose to Detroit, as Matthew Stafford, for the second week, has showed that kind of worth the money. Kind of worth the money that you guys said that I was deserving of, or maybe not so much deserving of. I'm kind of worth the money, as they beat the New York Giants 24-10. In the game where, remember I said if Odell Beckham plays that maybe I should pick the Giants, but if he doesn't, and you know what? I still felt comfortable leaving it with Detroit because Odell Beckham isn't himself yet. Odell Beckham sat there and said, like, listen, I have a 68-week injury and we're only on week 4, which means that he has a lot of recovery left to even feel right, cut right, get up to speed. Remember, he just hasn't been able to put weight on this, so he hasn't been able to work out, he's been able to run, there's a lot of things going into just that, making sure that tendon in there feels right. Now he has to get all that muscle grouping back right. Now, Odell Beckham, they didn't fall for the shell of the man that is Odell Beckham. Brandon Marshall can't get any separation from his receivers. Honestly, Des Bryant looked like Brandon Marshall. You couldn't tell them apart last week. To be honest with you, 2 6'4+ guys that's supposed to be big body receivers, and they couldn't catch a ball or get separation. Brandon Marshall hasn't been able to catch balls, period, lately. Just dropping all kinds of ball. But yet, every time I look up at him, he has some new fancy hairstyle. He sure as hell has time to think about what kind of hair he wants, but he doesn't have enough time to put into his can catches. Because remember all those catching drills he used to do in Chicago? How come we don't see those anymore? What happened to those hands? Apparently, they don't exist anymore. And the New York Giants fall 0-2 for the 0-2. And to be honest with you, they may start off 0-3. We'll get into our picks when we come back from this commercial break.
It's 420 somewhere, and you should be prepared. And there's no better way to prepare like heading down to Smoky Muse, where you'll find all your smoking accessories from vapes, bongs, pipes, papers, incense, cleaners, and more. Just go to Smoky Muse at 1311 Southeast 17th Street, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33316. Tell them MyT Radio sent you and receive a special in-store discount. It's not include Larry Tobacco products.
And we are back. Yes, that was a quick commercial break. I know, a very, very quick commercial break. You guys are wondering, listen, man, we don't have a lot of time. You realize that's the midway mark of the show. We still have a lot of football to get to. Because with week 2 in the bag, we can't sit here and focus what happened in week 2. We can't. If we do that, then basically what we do is that we're almost submitting to the moment. So let's move on. Very first week, Thursday night football. We have the LA Rams playing the San Francisco 49ers. And even though we've said the LA Rams, they played a good game against Washington in the second week and lost. Played a good game in the first week. These are really good things. I don't see San Francisco having any kind of components that can stop them. Very first game, I have LA Rams over the San Francisco 49ers. Now we start getting into Sunday and these 1 o'clock games. And man, don't we love Sundays. Like, am I the only one that so happy that these Sundays are back? Because now we get football. You guys get me here talking football with you. And you don't get that warm. Is it just me getting that warm fuzzy feeling? Like, is it just me? Okay, it could be just me, but you guys know. So first we have Baltimore versus Jacksonville, right? Baltimore versus Jacksonville. Baltimore versus Jacksonville. Baltimore versus Jacksonville. And just to let you know, the theme of this week, right? The theme of this week, when it comes to these picks, just to let you know, is that we're going to test a lot of these teams' metals, right? We're going to see if you truly are the team that you say that you are. And because some of these teams started off hot, some of these teams didn't. Some of these teams we had expectations for, and some of them we didn't. So we're going to see if some of these teams that we had expectation for can rewrite their script and start living up to those expectations. And we're going to also see if some of these teams that we didn't expect from can keep showing us that, hey, we are for real. And also some of these forgotten teams. And that's where Baltimore versus Jacksonville comes into play. Is that Jacksonville is an up-and-coming team, but if Baltimore is really the team that they say that they are, have the weapons, have Super Bowl caliber, has a Super Bowl caliber defense, has a Super Bowl winning quarterback that bet on himself the year that he won the Super Bowl at that. Yes, remember what he did. He decided that he didn't want to sign his contract extension. He didn't want to take the money that Baltimore was giving him. Flacco decided that, oh, my name is Joe, and I'm going to bet on myself. What do you know? And by betting on himself and not taking that contract, he won a Super Bowl that year and earned himself something even grander. So we're going to see if there's still that team. Because if not, and I'm picking Baltimore, if not, we're going to find out that Jacksonville may actually be an up-and-coming team. This game is going to be physical. This game is going to be on the ground. If you have Leonard Fournette, if you have that new fandangle weapon that Baltimore now has, Javarius Allen, put him in the game, let these boys go to work. It's going to be one of those games. This may even, listen, as I'm even saying that, this may be one of those 9-6 games. Just saying. Cleveland versus Indy. So believe it or not, I just don't believe in Indy here. I don't believe that Indy has anything in that tank. I'm actually going to say that Cleveland They put their young stud in the situation to see if he can actually get a victory with their young team, with their young wide receivers, and Joe Thomas, who continues to have a consecutive snap count of over 10,000 snaps. Next up, we have the Giants versus Philly. And this is where I have Giants in trouble this year. Like I said, that defense is pretty damn good. That defense has to hold down Carson Wentz and that offensive attack that they are. But Eli Manning has no help. And we saw that basically anytime Eli Manning takes anything more than a 4-drop pass, he's getting rushed or he's getting sacked. I'm going to pick Philly to win at home here. This may be the first time I'm wrong, but I'm going to pick Philly to win at home here. Next up, we have Miami versus my... And you should already know who I'm going to pick here. It's no surprise. It's no secret. I am going to go for the Jets. And it's not because I'm a homer this year. I honestly believe that if the Jets are going to suck this year, there are only a few victories that they're going to get. And you know where they come from? Do you know where you get your victories like this from? You get your victories from division opponents. You get your victories from rivalry teams. You get your victory from games like this. Finally, the game that Curse and the tight end and Jeremy Curley and Matt Forte and Bilal Powell and all of these young weapons are finally gonna be there. Some vets, some young, some old, some new, some returning. We get to see all of them back in action. And if there's anybody that I believe that the Jets can beat, it's going to be Miami. Now, do they beat Miami this game? Or do they beat Miami when they come down here? That is the question. Like I told you, they're gonna beat Buffalo too, which means that they're gonna beat Buffalo, New York. Same thing here. Same exact thing here. They are going to beat Miami in New York. And the Jets will get their first victory of the season, and it will feel like their Super Bowl. And Jets fans obnoxiously will celebrate it like it's their Super Bowl and give other Jets fans that do not see much into that victory, but the fact that the Jets aren't winless, a bad name. And then we get Denver versus Buffalo. And there's one thing we heard about LaShawn McCoy, right? LaShawn McCoy is kind of having like a hammy groin kind of issue. And this is something that has plagued LaShawn McCoy his whole entire career. This is why I always say, if LaShawn McCoy is healthy, LaShawn McCoy is rightly ranked as one of the top 3 to 5 running backs in the league. But LaShawn McCoy doesn't stay healthy enough. And that is his biggest problem. That is the biggest problem for them. Playing around the music over here a little. So I have Denver beating Buffalo because I have that defense being another stifling factor. And once again, like I said, this is are you the truth or not? Are you really that somebody? Because this is where we'll find out if Denver really, you understand, like Denver can find a way to start the season 3-0. Victory over Buffalo. And I see them attaining that. Next up, we have New Orleans Saints versus Carolina. And because of how bad New Orleans Saints' defense is, I'm going to give this one to Carolina. Now, this is a game that if you have any of the wide receivers for the Carolina Panthers, you should pay attention to them this game, because this is a game that they have lost. And Cam Newton has lost his security blanket, Greg Olsen. And Greg Olsen's been in this league for a while now. and he has a broken foot, which means he's probably out for the remainder of the season. So this is probably going to be an up in productivity for everybody. The two best wide receivers that they have on this team, and also that running back that young running back that they just got. So those are going to be some guys that you go want to look at this week as they play the New Orleans Saints, as the New Orleans Saints have shown that they couldn't stop. I don't know. What's an easy thing to stop? You tell me. They can't stop that. Like, honestly, like, I've seen Florida drivers have an easier time with this four-way traffic than I've seen New Orleans have with offensive in the NFL right now. And we have to get into it. Remember, we already spoke about New Orleans offense. I don't believe in them. I don't believe in them at all. But I do believe in getting pieces from New Orleans, because we do know one thing, that whether they win or whether they lose, it's going to be a shootout. And if New Orleans if you're playing New Orleans, you're usually going to put a couple of points, and it means that New Orleans is going to have to counter with a whole bunch of points through the air. Atlanta takes on Chicago. Chicago is another team that has a horrific defense. They have no offensive weapons, at least nothing on when it comes to the wide receiver. And their running back, Howard, is questionable because he has a slight injury. And we're going to have to see if their backup running back has anything to contribute to this team. We have Atlanta versus Detroit. This, folks, I know you took a long time for it. This is the very first multiverse game of the week. Atlanta versus Detroit. This is going to be another one where we want to see who is who. We want to see if Atlanta is really Atlanta. We want to see if Detroit is this new team that they're showing us to be. Now, luckily, or ironically, or luckily for us, both of these teams play in a dome. So we get to see dome-on-dome action. Detroit has a dome home. Atlanta plays in a dome. We get to see both teams play in a dome. So really, we got to see which one of these guys can high fly. And we already know what Atlanta can do. Can Matthew Stafford continue to make Golden Tate look special? Can he finally get the ball? Can we finally see Eric Ebram? Eric Ebram, folks, in what is now third or fourth season, finally get the use that we thought he was going to be able to get when he first came into this league as a big body 6'8" plus, or 6'6", 6'8" tight end with basketball background. Are we finally going to get that? So that's going to be the first game. I'm going to pick Detroit to win this game because Detroit is at home. And most people probably aren't going to pick Detroit to win this game. This game is probably going to be heavily favored for Atlanta, which rightly so, I understand. But man, Matthew Stafford has really been slinging that ball well. Reminds me of another gunslinger that we used to know.
Dirty turkey shark,
So, yes, I very wholeheartedly see the Detroit Lions coming out with a victory here. Yeah, Pittsburgh taking on the Chicago Bears. And once again, Chicago's another one of those horrific teams. Sorry, I already passed that one. Tampa Bay versus Minnesota. Minnesota has a sputtering offense right now. Tampa Bay has a surging offense right now. And I don't fully believe in Minnesota's defense. I'm taking Tampa Bay to win this game on the road. We have just about 30 more seconds before we go into this break. I wonder if we could get the rest of these picks in. I have New England beating Houston because they're New England. Because they're Houston. I don't even know if you need an expert analyst for that or any kind of reasoning for that. New England has sputtered a little, but still won, half of their games. I don't see them losing to Houston, who is just sputtering. If Seattle is Seattle, Seattle's going to beat Tennessee, but Tennessee has been putting up resistance lately that gives us some kind of cause for pause. And talking about pauses, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to finish up our picks for the week. We are going to get into our fantasy football section. And let me even talk some NBA real quick. We'll see. That and more on the Mighty Sports Podcast right here on mytradio.net.
Stuck trying to figure out what to do on a Friday again? Well, stop worrying and stop thinking and head down to Capone's nightclub in downtown Fort Lauderdale. This is where you'll find DJ Scepter mixing in the lounge room so you can start dancing and start drinking. And we understand some of you may be an introvert, so you may want to start drinking so you can start dancing. But regardless of what you do, you make sure you do that with DJ Scepter. That's every Friday from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Ladies, you bring your sexy. Fellas, you bring your swag. It's going down at Capone's, but wait, there's more. Trying to figure out what to do on a Wednesday? Yes, hump day? You'll find DJ Scepter at O'Malley's from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's right there on 441 between Coconut Creek and Royal Palm Boulevard. DJ Scepter plays everywhere that you want to be. Whether that's a birthday, a wedding, bar mitzvah, quinceañera, proms, corporate events, bachelor or bachelorette parties. DJ Scepter puts a royal touch on everything. And for reservations, just send a simple email to bookings@djscepter.com. That's bookings@djscepter.com.
And we are back to the Mighty Sports Podcast. I'm still your host, Alan Thomar Taylor. And yes, if you're still listening, that means you're listening to mytradio.net, and I appreciate you listening. That's mytradio.net, where every voice is
Mighty!
Woo! Let's just get right into it. So if Seattle is Seattle should honestly beat Tennessee. But Tennessee has really showed us that they may be able to do a couple of things. So I'm not gonna completely write Tennessee off. I'm not gonna go against anybody that think that Tennessee can win at home. I'm just saying that Seattle needs to continue showing that they are the New England Patriots of the West, and traveling over to Tennessee shouldn't affect them. They should come up with this victory. The first game of the afternoon games, 4:00 games. Next up, we have Cincinnati versus Green Bay. And Cincinnati has been struggling every single way, shape, or form that you can think of. Andy Dalton hasn't been looking like Andy Dalton. He's been having times getting into A.J. Green, who last year got an injury. This year, still catching those balls, catching it at the high peak or at the high point. Separation is starting to slack a little, but still able to go up and get that ball. And the bunch of other weapons he has. Tyler Eifert looks like a bust. That dual-headed running game that was always suspect looks even more suspect this year. So I don't believe in Cincinnati to go all the way over to Green Bay. And even though it's not all the way over, like Wisconsin is almost right there. I don't believe that they can go over to Wisconsin and go into Green Bay and pick up a victory over Aaron Rodgers, a guy who just came off of a heartbreaking victory over a division rival in Atlanta. No. I see Green Bay coming out with this victory and beating Cincinnati. Next up, we have Kansas City and Andy Reid. It's funny how you say Kansas City, you don't even mention any of the players. It's Kansas City and Andy Reid. Like, Alex Smith don't get no burn. Alex Smith has finally decided to play right because he's like, you know what? I am not trying to be Kaepernick again. I am not trying to be sitting while everybody else is playing. I am not trying to be Kaepernick again. So, I see Kansas City being able to beat the LA Chargers because what did we just say about the Chargers? The LA Chargers know how to do one thing, and that's losing in the games. And Kansas City has showed us that they recently know how to do one thing, and that is win. And Andy Reid has showed us one thing that he knows how to do, and that is also win. So yes, here we go, folks. The Kansas City Chiefs over the LA Chargers. And for the last Sunday night game. We have Oakland versus Washington, and I expect Oakland to keep on trucking behind the man beast that is known as Marshawn Lynch as he gets down with his B-boy stance, and they run all over the Washington. No, let's say the name. And Monday night game, we have Dallas versus Arizona. And this should be a game where Dallas comes back and shows us that they aren't quite, that they are back, that they aren't the team that we saw last week. But Arizona has Patrick Peterson on that team and a bunch of other great defensive weapons. And if Des Bryant and the boys are having problems getting separation, or even being able to gain real positive yardage at that line, I see. That's many teams that can duplicate what Denver did. I believe Arizona is one of them. I see a repeat of last week. We just got to hope that Carson Palmer, that offense, comes through. Folks, those are my picks for this week. Rams over San Francisco, Baltimore over Jacksonville, Cleveland over over the Colts, Philly over the Giants, the Jets over Miami, Denver over Buffalo, Carolina over New Orleans, Pittsburgh over Chicago, Arizona over Dallas, Detroit over Atlanta, Tampa Bay over Minnesota, New England over Houston, Seattle over Tennessee, Green Bay over Cincinnati, Kansas City over the Chargers, and Raiders over Washington, with Arizona over Dallas. Yes, those are the mighty picks for week 4. That's the week we on? We on week 4 already? Nah, we on week 3. Those are the picks for week 3. Folks, I never said that's the show, but we made time for you. Woo! We got a whole 10 minutes, not quite 10 minutes, but we got a whole 10 minutes to spare. And ladies, this is finally a time. So I'm going to give you some time to take a break, get yourself a pen and paper, and get ready to take some notes. But before we get to the point where you need to take notes on, did I mention that Kobe Bryant is going to have his number retired in December? Both numbers, 24 and 8. I only did that to give you guys more time. So, ladies, if you're ready, here's for you. This is your section. This is your time. These is where we talk fantasy football.
The mighty fantasy football tips. Not winning tips, just tips. Just the tip? Just the tip. Just the tip.
Let's just say what I want involves much more than just the tips. Just the tips. What I want is much more than just the tips.
If you only could see my impression. So, very first thing, before we get started into the tips. As we get started into the fantasy football tips. Ladies. If you have, or anybody, if you have any question, any fantasy football questions whatsoever, you can DM me directly, either at myt-sports on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, or at MyT Radio on Facebook, on Instagram, or on Twitter. Right? Or during the show, believe it or not, you can communicate directly with me. You can send me messages. We can talk. We can get down with the guest down. We can chat. Even though I really don't like to do the chat and everything, but you can send me your questions and I'll read them and I'll respond. So, if you have any questions about especially, and this is really determined by the ladies, if you have any questions about your fantasy football squad, about any little ancillary thing, send me a message and I will address it right here live every Wednesday on the show. Like I said, this section is for you. Utilize it. Make it yours. Own it. But make it beneficial to you. Because it's here for you. So let's get to the little things, right? Little things like editing your lineup. Right? Because I'm under the impression that maybe some of you don't understand how to edit your lineup. And I say this because I look at your lineups and I realize that you haven't taken players out from week to week. players that aren't going to play. So before we edit our lineup, understand a few things. Understand what it means for a player to have a bye week. B-Y-E. Bye week. Like goodbye, bye-bye. It means that they're not playing that week. It means that they're not playing that week. You need to take them out your lineup. Because if they don't play, that means you don't get points. They don't play, you don't get points. Take them out of there. Another reason to take a person out, well, is because they have a big old O on there beside their name. You know what that red O means? Out. Like, I'm not joking. So if you see that big old red O, you take them out. There's no reason for that person to be in your lineup. Like, you're just throwing away points. You're getting into the
danger zone.
Take these guys out. Also, IR. It means injury reserve, which means the person is injured, which also means take them out. SSPD, suspended. Take them out. And Q means questionable, which means watch them. But so you don't forget, take them out. Put in somebody that you know is going to play, just in case in the last minute you're not quite sure, just in case you forget. So, now that you know what the Q means, the IR means, the O means, and the SSPD means, questionable, injured reserves, out, and suspended, and you do realize that all those are indications that, you know what, you may not want to play me this week. Because if you play me, I'm going to end up playing you. So, let's worry about editing some of these lineups. Click on your fantasy football app, which I'm hoping that you've all done. You all should have done this because, hey, you drafted your team. Oh, you probably went to the computer. But at some point in time, you need to edit your lineups. So you're either on your computer, or you're on your phone, or you're on your tablet. Me, I'm putting up my trusty tablet right beside me. When you pull it up, right, then you'll get to the fantasy football home screen. And the home screen normally has, very first thing is going to show you who this week's opponent is for you. You click on my team. This week I'm taking on, who am I taking on actually? I lost last week to Lewis, so I'm 1-1. Not too happy about that. And believe it or not, I actually have some changes I need to make right now. So, as I walk you through this tutorial real quick, just how to edit your lineup, then you should be squared away. So let's remember, like I said, when you click on the fantasy football app, it should automatically take you, if you haven't been in there yet, take you to the home screen. That home screen is going to show you that who this week's matchup is for you. For me, it is no money team. And right now, because I haven't completed my lineup, I'm projected to lose to them 74-84. See, you got a projection there. And that's a prediction. That's more, let's consider it a prediction. As you know, we're about to go into overtime of the show. You know that. But we go into overtime for this, ladies. Like, listen, just when you think that we were done, we give you more. Just the tips, though. Nothing more. Ninja tips. So right underneath that, as I said, right if you see a matchup, you're going to click on my team, and it will take you to your roster. Very simply, you go to edit lineup. But before we go to edit lineup, let's take a quick look. You're going to be able to see, once again, the projected points for each one of your players. In your quarterback position, you see, he may have 14 points projected. And if your backup quarterback has 15, then you know what? You may want to put in your backup quarterback over your starting quarterback. But we're not going to get too much into depth, like I said. But I'll get you to understand a couple of other things later. I don't want to confuse you too much. But as of right now, if your backup quarterback is set to be better than your starting quarterback, put him in there. Unless you know for a fact that, hey, you know what? My starting quarterback is going up against a really bad defense. Well, like I said, we'll talk about those bad defenses later in the show. Same thing with your kickers. Same thing with your wide receivers. Same thing with your tight ends. Same thing with your running backs. You know, quarterbacks, the guy with the QB beside his name. Running back, the guy with the RB beside his name. Tight end, the guy with the TE beside his name. Those guys. Kicker, can you guess what he has beside his name? I knew you could. Okay. So to not overthink things, keep them real simple for you. If a person is set to have a better time or to have a better game than what your starter is, take them out, put them in. And how do you do that? Finally, this is where we're at. Edit lineup, right? Now I'm doing mine on the tablet. It may look slightly different on the computer or on your cell phone, but I'm hoping that generally it all is schematic. The schematic is pretty much the same. At least we're all looking for the same thing. And now what you're going to do is that if you have a person that you want to move, now you take that quarterback and he should have a move beside his name. Take that move. And then it's going to give you an option now it's going to let you know of the only options that you have. You're going to have to replace him with one of these other running backs or we're in the quarterback. You have to replace him with one of these other quarterbacks. If you draft it the way I told you, you should only have one other quarterback on your team. Maybe. And this is where you utilize them, right? So you're going to click here because you're going to replace one person for the next. And then the very most important thing that you have to remember is that you need to save your changes. This is like anything else. There's no autosave here. Just like your Word documents, just like your work documents, just like anything else that you do, just like your little projects, make sure you save your work. You edit a lineup, save it. Edit a lineup, save it. Edit your lineup, make sure you save it. If you don't save it, then how do you expect it to be saved? Right? Sounds simple, right? But people do this all the time. And ladies and fellas that are in the MyT fantasy leagues, Brew Crew Fantasy League, the Women's Fantasy League, I'm watching you guys. If I notice that you guys aren't making changes, if you guys are leaving in out players, you are going to get flagged. I'm looking for participating players here. So this is a slight warning in the after effects of the show. Now that the show's officially over, I'm talking directly to yous.
MyT!
You need to make sure that you're updating your rosters every week. If you're not, and listen, and while there's a bunch of people that are updating their rosters and are staying on point, and they're probably a little upset at me that I'm even having to say this at this point in the show, but it takes the fun out of it for a lot of people. I know they're happy that, you know what, they're gonna take this money. Like basically looking at it like they're about to be Robin Hood. They're about to steal from the rich and give to the poor. Because it's free money out there just to BS around for 16 or 17 weeks. A few minutes a day. But for you guys that are in my league, you definitely need to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's because, like I said, we're looking to expand the league. We're looking to do things with the league. And we can't do things if people aren't participating. So if you're not participating, then you know now, I'm going to start giving you little red marks and little flags. And next year, when football season come around, you may not get that invite. Same thing go for you, ladies. You may not get that invite next year. And we're talking about this thing may jump to 250 next year. But right now, I barely even want to give you guys 50. So let's put this out there for you guys. If you didn't draft your team this year, you already have your first strike. Even I understand, you kind of already have your first strike, which I'm already considering a penalty for you, which is half of the prize money. For everybody else that drafted their team, full prize money. So be active during the weeks, because if you aren't active during the week, then if I look at it and you weren't one of those people that drafted your team and you're also not updating your rosters, then I can't, if you happen to get lucky enough to win, I can't justify you paying you $100 when everybody else that actually put their sweat, blood, and time into it, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm trying to say here. So you will be penalized for non-activity versus the people that are active. You haven't earned the same money. So, you've been warned. Hope you're listening, because you've been warned. So now let's get back into editing these lineups. Now, if you remember what I said, make sure you save these lineups. So, let me go ahead and make a quick move, because I went to go look for a better kicker. A kicker that's on a team that kind of doesn't get into the end zone a lot. They get close, but they have to settle for a lot of field goals. And right now, I feel like that is the kicker for the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to take my risk on him. I have moved him. He is now my starting kicker. And we have saved. And now when I look at my lineup, I have all slots filled. Not only with players, but with players that are going to play, produce, and put up points. That is the key thing here. Now, those are the basic stuff. Let's really get into the
mighty fantasy football tips. Not winning tips, just tips. Just the tip?
You're not really like playing this.
Just the tip.
Let's just say what I want involves much more than just the tips. Just the tips. What I want is much more than just the tips.
Crack, smack, weed, E's and CDs.
So, if you're like me, right, you may have had a couple of these players, and there's a couple of players out there that you have to stay away from. There's some players that are just causing you headaches. They're really just making you want to.
Dirty Turkish, back, flat, button, bucket, button, Perkaluma, button, bust,
You have a couple of players that are really causing you some headache. They're causing you to curse some bad words. They're causing you to question everything that you have done out there. Well, you know what? I feel your pain, and we're here together. First up, I'm going to give you a couple of people that you need to stay away from. Or if you have them, you may want to drop them. These guys have not proven to live up to their fantasy football hype. And you probably picked them up because of their efforts last year, or their name, or what you thought they can do. And they're just not quite doing it. The very first one, the biggest one of them all, is going to be Adrian Peterson. If you have Adrian Peterson, run! Drop him. Let him go. Unless he gets traded to like a team like the Giants or somebody that you know is going to utilize him more than 9 times a game, drop him. Get rid of him. You're way better off. And I may be jumping the gun here and confusing you ladies, or confusing some of you people, but that's the running back, Adrian Peterson, for New Orleans Saints. A much better option for the New Orleans Saints is their tight end, Cody Fleener. Much better option. Because New Orleans is a high-flying team. And New Orleans doesn't like to run the ball in the end zone. They like to pass the ball in the end zone. And one of the places they like to pass that ball to is to that big body tight end. So far right now, Cody Fleener has more value and upside than Adrian Peterson. Never thought I would say that. But while we're still talking about things that that belong to New Orleans, or things that at least used to belong to New Orleans, drop Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham is showing you that he is not what he used to be in New Orleans. He's not getting utilized how he was in New Orleans by Seattle, and he is not going to be able to produce any kind of reasonable numbers. Let him go. Let him go. Let him go, because his numbers are frozen. Let him go. Drop him. And I know you want to say, what? Drop him? You just taught me how to edit my lineup. I'm going to show you how to drop players in a minute. I'm going to show you how to get players that you need and or want. Also, Eddie Lacy. Fat boy Eddie Lacy. You may have picked him up maybe because of the name, maybe because you heard he was going to get a workload, maybe because you felt sympathy for him. But if you picked him up, stop it. Let him go. Let Eddie Laces go. Because Eddie Lacy is hanging up his laces. There's no reason for you to be there with him while he does it. And LeGarrette Blount. If you picked him up, you're probably thinking, you know what? Kind of feeling like his last name. You're kind of feeling like you're
smoke weed every day.
But that's because he had a high usage, and he got us like 18 touchdowns in New England somewhere, and now he's not that guy anywhere. And in a team like Detroit, where they'll rather... perfect example. LeGarrette Blount going to Detroit is like Adrian Peterson going to New Orleans. This is a team that will rather pass on 4th and 1 than run on 4th and 1. They'll rather pass on 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal, than run on 2nd and goal and 3rd and goal. They'll rather be cute than be they'll rather be cute than efficient. And you saw what cute and efficient get you in the Super Bowl versus the Patriots. He gets Marshawn Lynch in Oakland. So those are some of the guys that you definitely need to stay away from. Adrian Peterson, Jimmy Graham, Eddie Lacy, and LeGarrette Blount. Now, some people that you probably had that are injured, that you also probably need to drop. Don't worry. I told you I'll teach you how to drop and pick up players. And by golly, I'll make sure you learn how to drop and pick up players. Now, a lot of these guys is because they're injured. It's because they're broken. It's because that they can't rub two sticks together without falling apart. New England Patriots, Rob Gronkowski. Are you surprised? No. He's had back injuries, shoulders injury, knee injuries, ankle injuries, wrist injuries, head injury. Not from football. We just think he got some head injuries. Gronk, any kind of injury being to Gronk, it needs to be taken notice because we know Gronk has it's one of the things that we said about Gronk winning the first two episodes of the season, or the first two episodes for this, or the first 2 weeks of the season, is that Gronkowski healthy is the shit. Gronkowski also can very quickly take a shit on that field and no longer be available for you. Because you know it said the best ability is availability. And Gronkowski, for as great as he is, hasn't been consistently available for his team or for fantasy owners. Devontae Freeman, a top running back that was picked high. We hope you guys have let go of him. He's going to be going 6 to 8 weeks. Odell Beckham is another guy that isn't producing right now. Injury. Now, am I saying drop Odell Beckham? Probably not saying drop him so far. Because I'm expecting him to be back in like 3 weeks. And then you don't want to be the person that dropped Odell Beckham when he puts up 18 touchdowns in 12 weeks. You don't want to be that guy. Greg Olsen, as I told you earlier, the security blanket for the Carolina Panthers and for Cam Newton. He's out. Drop him. Pick somebody else up. Now, I know, listen, so far there's been a lot of tight ends. There's been a lot of receivers going here. Because I also told you to drop Jimmy Graham, because Jimmy Graham is also injured, not producing. And somebody else need to drop, or you need to look out for, is Matthew Stafford. As much praise as we gave to Detroit, I am very much going to be also watching out to see what Detroit does, because see what happens with this Matthew Stafford injury. Because if Detroit is healthy, if Matthew Stafford isn't healthy, and I mean 100% healthy, they don't beat Atlanta. So if Matthew Stafford ends up being questionable, trust me, that pick goes to Atlanta, and Atlanta starts out 3-0. Pick Atlanta in that game. Stay safe. Expect Matthew Stafford to, even if he plays, to not be at 100%. Trust my words on that. And now you have all of these players that you need to try to find a reason to add. Like I said, because if you lost a top receiver like Gronkowski, or a top running back like Freeman, or a top wide receiver like Beckham, you're wondering, where do I get this kind of production from? You know what? I'm glad you asked. One of the first names I mentioned to you guys is Cody Fleener, the tight end for New Orleans. If you don't have if you lost Gronkowski, if you lost Greg Olsen, or if you had Jimmy Graham, and those guys aren't producing for you, Cody Fleener will produce. Cody Fleener will produce. He's the only one that's really averaging on a consistent pace double-digit points so far, both weeks. So when I say averaging a double digit, because there's a lot of guys that have put up 20+ points so far for the season combined. But a lot of their numbers are a lot screwed. 4 points 1 week, 16 points another week. You can't depend on that. But if you're looking for something dependable, a dependable 6 to 9 points a game, 10 points a game, or maybe in his case 8 to 10 points a game, look no further than New Orleans' Cody Fleener. Now, we talked about that running game, right? If you had somebody like Devontae Freeman and you lost him, well, you know what? There are guys like Chris Carson from Seattle who is now taking over that heavy workload. But once again, pay attention to Rawls and see what happens with this Rawls return, because the Rawls return and Rawls looking good can definitely take away touches from Chris Carson. But you know who doesn't have to worry about the touches being taken away from them? Javarius Allen from Baltimore Ravens. And if you get the opportunity to pick up Javarius Allen, He is the new number one workload for Baltimore. And remember when I told you that, hey, Baltimore's been doing two things. They've been playing great defense and they've been finding a way to run that ball. And that's what probably is going to happen when they meet up with Jacksonville. It's going to be two trains meeting each other, butting heads, running against each other. It's going to be Javarius Allen that gets that ball. If you're still looking for a tight end, if you're still looking for more tight ends, don't forget Buffalo's Clay. We mentioned him as well. Even though everything struggled in Buffalo last week. Actually, that's probably the number one reason why you stay away from him, because he isn't like a Cody Fleener. When all things go bad, you can still think that he's gonna get 8 to 10 points. When things go bad, Clay gets you 2 points. And that's not sustainable. But Zach Miller has been a very sustainable figure in this NFL. And if you can get the opportunity to get Zach Miller, even though I don't trust anything in Chicago, he may be the one thing to trust, because they're going to need to throw it somewhere. Eric Ebron, I mentioned to you guys. Yes, in this new high-flying offense that Detroit has, Eric Ebron, another tight end, is available in most leagues. The guy that I told you that finally may be coming into his own in his third year. And while he may be coming into his own in his first year, there's a tight end that may be coming into his own in his first year. And he is the benefactor of Odell Beckham, whether he's on the field or off the field. Because when Odell Beckham is on the field, this guy gets open targets. When this guy is off the field, he gets a lot of targets. We're talking about the rookie tight end, Evan Ingram. So there you go, folks. You got some wide receiver. You got some receiving. You got some receiving in there, and a lot of it is tight ends. We're talking about Cody Fleener, we're talking about Cody Fleener from New Orleans, Clay from Buffalo, Eric Ebron from Detroit. We're talking about Miller from Cleveland, Zach Miller from Cleveland, and Evan Emerson from the New York Giants. And if you're looking for a running back because you lost some weapons, because you maybe you gambled on Adrian Peterson, or because Devontae Freeman just isn't there for you anymore, Chris Carson, Javarius Allen. Those guys are available. Don't be afraid to pull the trigger and pick them up. Now, as I told you, this is an all-purpose show. So if you don't know how to add players, I'm going to tell you how to quickly add players. So, if you do remember how we got to our roster earlier, if you don't remember how we got to our roster earlier, we're going to do a quick recap. You're going to click on the Fantasy Football app. When you click on the Fantasy Football app, it's going to take you to the Fantasy Football home. In the Fantasy Football home is where you're going to find your current week's matchup. Now, underneath that, you're going to see something that says My Team. You're going to click on My Team. Now, when in My Team, if you're looking, I'm not quite sure how it looks on the laptop or the computer at this time, but if you're on your tablet or you're on your cell phone, then it should pretty much look like this. You're going to see right now, right underneath your name, you're going to see a subcategory where it says rosters. Beside that, you're going to see roster news, which is a great place to get any form of news when it comes to your players. Injury reports. Remember I told you, like, hey, maybe you have Adrian Peterson, Jimmy Graham, Matthew Stafford. This is where you're going to start looking at them. Like, you can check news and see if anything popped up about your players and see how they're doing. And see it, and if they're injured or anything is wrong with them, this will be the perfect place where you'll be able to find out that you need to edit your roster. But let's go over one more. As you see right beside roster news, you see players. And bam, this is where you get the smorgasbord of players. It's going to break them down by a bunch of subcategories. If you created a watch list, that's going to be the very first thing that you have on there. Every single player that you clicked watch on, that you want to keep an eye on. And you know, I just got the notification for DJ Scepter playing tonight. Is it already 10 o'clock? It's already 10 o'clock, which means that he's going live in 10 minutes. Which means that we are definitely making sure we cut this show in 10 minutes. It'll be just about an hour and a half. It'll be perfect. It'll be perfect. And then right underneath that, you're going to see the top available overall players. Right? And if you scroll, you'll see quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. You know, you're going to see one that says flex. And if I told you before, flex are basically just a combination of wide receivers and, yes, running backs and tight ends, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to see for defense and special teams after that, and then also for kickers. Now, you can toggle this thing a couple of ways. right? Now, let's just stick to what we wanted to stick to. Finding that tight end, because as we can see, there's a lot of tight ends that went down, and there's a lot of tight ends that are on the market to be picked up. So if you scroll on the tight ends, you can be able to click on a section that says all tight ends. Now you can do this for any section. You can click on all wide receivers, all running backs, all quarterbacks, all defenses. Right now, I'm showing you the example while in the tight end section, or explain it to you while in the tight end section. Now, one thing that I like to do, I like to sort my stat view, which tablet and phone is in your right-hand corner. Right now, it's on matchup stats. I like to go to scoring. And it shows me the total points that the players have gotten so far this season. Now, when you click on points, it also separates or organizes that points from, ascendant to descendant, from the highest, from the most points to the lowest points. And if you're looking at tight ends, more than likely, Cody Fleener is number one. Now, remember I told you, he was averaging just about, I believe that he was at just about double-digit points for the whole entire season. Well, for over the 2 games, I think he was more consistent. Well, as you can see, last game he put up 9 points, which is a game that before that he put up 11. That's consistency to me. And that was both against, well, I'm not going to say that these were great defenses, right? But they were against Minnesota, somebody was said to be a great defense. I had a good defense at the time. And, mind you, when they end up beating New Orleans, everybody said it was because they had a great defense. But he also put up 9 against New Orleans, as he's managed to get a touchdown so far in every game. So I guess so far right now, his value is going to be dependent on his touchdown rate. But like I said, this is a team that likes to pass the ball in the red zone versus running the ball in the end zone. And nobody likes a big body receiver more than, as we know, New Orleans Saints own Drew Brees. Because that's how Jimmy Graham is still being picked up in all of these damn leagues. So if you clicked on Cody Fleener, you clicked on a tight end that you may like. Because if you clicked on the tight ends, you should notice a lot of the guys that I mentioned. Fleener from New Orleans. Even Hopper from Atlanta may be a good choice if he's still out there. Now, look, stay away from these guys like Jay James, that's questionable. Or Ingram, that's questionable for right now. Or Clay, that's maybe even questionable. Which is a bunch of names that I mentioned earlier. Stay away from manage those guys. So if you're trying to get a jump on something, there's a reason why those guys are still sitting there. Because those guys are questionable. But Cody Fleener isn't questionable. So we're going to do the thing that we're going to do. So you click on Cody Fleener, or anybody's name that you want. Right? Now you're going to see, when the player info comes up, it's going to give you the option to watch or add that player. Now, sometimes if you want to just add a player to your watch list because you want to kind of spectate him for a couple of weeks, this is where you click watch. And then that watch will change to watching. And remember when we said that first subcategory when you got here? This is where that player will go into. He'll go into your watch list now. Now let's get back to adding this player. We're going to click on add. Now when you click on add, you should most likely get the message that, hey, your roster is way too full to just add this player. So you have to let somebody go. So if you have the Jimmy Grahams, if you have the Adrian Peterson, if you have Gronkowski, Freeman, Olsen, let them go. That's who you're dropping them for. Maybe it's not so easy for you. Maybe you're just listening to this and you're like, hey, I can just use a better producing tight end, and I'm trying to drop him for a current player that I have right now. Well, sit here and pick your poison. Now for me, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change one Saint for the other. Right? I'm going to drop Adrian Peterson. As I said, Adrian Peterson should be dropped. And I'm going to pick him up for Cody Fleener. Now, as I told you before, you always have to make sure that you save your work. So, you're going to hit save for this, and it's going to ask you to confirm it one last time. Hey, you're adding Cody Fleener, and you are going to drop Adrian Peterson. And that is going to be a big fat confirm. Now you should notice that that player is now in your lineup. Now, depending on where you put him at, whether that was a place that you put him in the bench or if you put him in the starting lineup, you may need to move him. Like for me, he got moved automatically to my bench. So I'm going to do like I told you before. We're going to go to edit lineup. I'm going to find the guy that's got Cody Fleener. I'm going to hit move beside his name. It's going to tell me the only options I have to move him to. In this case, this is going to be either the tight end position or the flex position. For me, I'm moving him to the tight end position. TE. Move him here. Hit save. And there we go. Roster is saved. Everything's in line. And you're ready to go. Now, one of the things that you do kind of want to pay attention to, right, is, I told you I'm going to give you some tips. I'm going to give you some really good pointers. Is who these guys are playing against. So, I am going to give you a list of the worst defenses right now in fantasy football. These are the teams that have allowed the most points. They've given up the most points. They have the worst fantasy football score. Like -13, -6, -5, and -1. Yes, folks. The team giving up the most points. The worst team out there so far is New Orleans Saints with -13. So you know what? I told you. This week they play Carolina. If you have any one of those Carolina receivers, send them. Is Ted Ginn still playing for? Is is Ted Ginn still playing for New Orleans? I mean, still playing for Carolina? Because if he is, this would be a good time to pick him up. He'll probably get a couple of deep balls that he'll be able to catch. Kelvin Benjamin, same thing. You should already have Kelvin Benjamin as one of the first, top 10 wide receivers that you took off the board, most likely. Another team with a horrific defense, surprisingly, the New England Patriots. Unfortunately, the Houston Texans don't have enough firepower, enough discipline, enough coaching, enough balls, enough offense to be able to take advantage of that. They'll probably end up running that ball a lot. So if you have Miller, you probably end up getting a lot of yards from him, as they'll constantly keep trying to punch that ball down their throat. And maybe you get lucky and he runs one in. New York Jets also have a horrific defense. But they're also playing, and the New York Jets basically right now sitting a total -5 points. But they're playing Miami. And I told you that I feel good about them playing Miami. And especially because not only are they a division rival, and this is the team that they normally play they play well anyway. Well, guess what? Miami also has a bad defense. So they are the next one. Miami defense is the 4th worst fantasy football defense in the league. -1 point. Now, do I think the Jets can do anything with them? No. But you know what? Bad defense is bad defense. It's just now who has the better offense. Miami, now, if you want my honest opinion, Miami probably should win that game because they do have the better offense. They do have the better offensive weapons. They do have more talent. I mean, come on now. They have Tannehill. Sorry, they have Jay Cutler. So they should win. But man, I'm picking the Jets. And also, believe it or not, Minnesota. Minnesota has the 5th worst fantasy football defense. And they're going up against Tampa Bay. So if a guy like Deshaun Jackson is out there, this may be when Deshaun Jackson finally finds that end zone. If you have Evans, this is that time that Evan finds another trip to the end zone. If you haven't tried OJ Howard, this may be the time that you pick up Tampa Bay's rookie tight end OJ Howard and give him a shot, because Minnesota is the kind of team that will allow you to score on them. Now, those are the top 5. Now we're going to give you some honorable mentions. Chicago's a horrible team, and they're playing Pittsburgh. So if you have a Pittsburgh weapon, play a Pittsburgh weapon. New York Giants are playing Philly. See why I didn't want to pick some of these teams to win? Why I thought the Giants may start out 0 or start out with have another loss, or start this season 0-3, as they go up against Philly and the Indianapolis Colts versus Cleveland. Now I don't trust anything Cleveland has. So I don't know if you can take advantage of this. It's like, I guess, the New Jersey versus Miami game. Is that if I had to really take anybody, I guess I'm taking the few players from Miami more than anything else. Their running back, their wide receiver. In this case, if I'm in Chicago, I'm probably going to take their running back more than anything else. And maybe, their tight end, Zach Miller, because Indianapolis' defense is that bad. There you go. That's everything I have. Those are the mighty fantasy football tips.
The mighty fantasy football tips. Not winning tips, just Tips. Just the tip? Just the tip. Just the tip.
Let's just say what I want involves much more than just the tips. Just the tips. What I want is much more than just the tips.
Thank you guys for listening. I am Talento Martela, your host. This is the Mighty Sports Podcast at myt-sports.net. You're listening at MyT Radio. It's also at mytradio.net. Thank you. Stay tuned, stay blessed, and don't stress. One hand washes the other, and both wash the face as we continue on our pace in this human rat race.
Sorry, boys. All the stitches in the world can't sew me together again. Lay down. Lay down. Always knew I'd make a stop there. But a lot later than a whole gang of people thought. Last call for drinks. Bars closing down. Sun's out. Where we going for breakfast? Don't wanna go far. Rough night. Tired, baby. Tired.
Woo! And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
My team!
Or maybe not.